Dealing with storm damage is tough, but the stress can be even harder to handle. Call Iowa Concern for help 24/7. Connect with emotional support, learn about your legal rights, discuss financial concerns, and find other assistance. Talk to a person who cares. Call Iowa Concern at 800-447-1985. That's Iowa Concern at 800-447-1985.
Welcome to the Science of Parenting podcast. Am I supposed to sound chipper-y?
The stuff that you did first, is that somewhere in a script?
The trailer. That's the trailer script.
I'm crooked? How can I be
I think your camera needs a tip.
What is this?
What, your hair?
Should I do them all again?
You're so good.
Yeah, that was good. That was really good.
Subscribe to our weekly audio podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you find bleep, 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 bleep. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or where... Can't I say that? You can also watch our show on video each week and sound like a robot.
Choke.
One more time or call it good?
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Tips from Our Expert. I need to start off every video with a bloopers reel because now I had like this big smile. My cheeks are already hurting. Today, we are talking about parenting during a pandemic, which thankfully we have some experts for you on this. The Science of Parenting team has offered resources for years, and now they're offering resources even more in tune to where we're at because they're on a podcast. So it's perfect because we're all virtual anyway. So it's like the best. We're going to pull on one of our guests today, Lori Haynes.
Hey.
Hey, Lori.
I
so
forget
excited.
that you're going to do the blooper reel and then you play it and I start to giggle in the background and thankfully no one can hear me.
I know. And the best part is like, here's our experts today as they watch you like fumble through life.
Exactly.
Yes. You guys, you know, you've created a brand based off of research, but given in like a real life way. So getting to see you guys have
real?
issues with cameras
Yes.
and sideways mirrors and timing. Let's pull Mackenzie on now too and just meet the team. Hey.
Mackenzie Johnson here. I'm so excited. Leah's been like a secret part of our team for a long time, and we're like,
Yes.
we're here. Our faces are all together.
Yes.
And I've told you guys, I said I knew I would get myself on the screen with you. I just didn't know how. And here we are. So
Here it is.
You did it.
I am so incredibly excited to listen to you guys today and interact with you. You are just full of information. I love it. Before we dive into all of that, how are you? I miss seeing you guys in real life. What is your life like?
Ooh. Well, okay, you have the most recent information. Yeah. You go first. You've had the most change.
Oh, well, in the middle of COVID, I have two littles. I have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. And we bought a new house. And so we've been moving and transitioning and my child getting ready for school in the middle of COVID. And but we're good.
Yeah, totally fine. We're fine.
And we're great. And we're great.
And we're great. Yeah. It's all fine. Yes.
Lori.
So I have 3 who are in 3 different life stages. My launched daughter has been working. She got a brand new job. She got a brand new job right when COVID hit. So she had to be patient for them to bring her on board. My college age daughter was, just living her best life in the basement with her computer and loved it right there.
So close to mom.
I know, exactly. And then my high schooler, she is so happy right now to be playing volleyball. So we're hoping that it sticks for a while. Yeah.
Yes.
It's all good.
Totally.
And we're managing.
Yes, we are. I mean, it doesn't look pretty all the time, but but it is happening. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to just dive right in and listen in. And just for those of you viewing, whether you've joined us for a Tips from Our Expert before, or not, just as a reminder, throw any of your questions in the comments, or even if it's not a question, but more just like, oh my gosh, that's a great thought. I've never had that or something, throw it in the comments. We really want to create a fun, engaging community, and we want to answer your guys' questions. If they don't have the answer right now, we will find it for you, and we can always come back later and add more resources to the comments. If you're watching this later on today or later this week after the live is over, still throw your comments in the questions in the comment section, and I'll make sure to get those to our experts so that they can provide you with an answer. Okay, I'm excited. I'm going to get my pen out. I'm going to take notes.
Awesome. All right, let's hit it. So, gosh, here we are, and we just want to say welcome. And essentially, like Leah said, we have started a podcast, and just exciting information for us, especially because we like to share both the research and reality. And I think for the two of us, it's been great to be able to do that and be able to say, hey, there are some important things that research tells us, but there's also real life that happens. And right now in this pandemic, real life is something that we've not been able to plan for. And we have been, hit with the most unexpected things in the most unexpected ways, right? Yes. So why don't you start us off with our beliefs? How about that?
Yes, absolutely. So yes, we are the Science of Parenting team. We want to bring you that research and reality. When we do our live podcasts, we like to share a little bit about our beliefs. And so just a little bit about who we are and how we approach parenting education. So our first belief is that we believe there's more than one way to raise great kids. So we have something that we call pluralistic approach to parenting, because we believe that the way that Lori is raising one of her kids, and even the way she's raising another one of her kids, or the way I'm raising my kids, they don't have to be the same, and we can both be raising great kids. All right, we can go ahead and flip ahead a few slides, actually. Thank you. So the next thing that we believe that as parents, you are the experts on your family, right? So we say our job is to share that information, which is actually a part of our belief number 3. We share that information. Parents get to decide how it fits their family. And we strive to make our information that's research-based and trustworthy, right? We strive to make that information available to you so you can find it on your own time, right? I can tell you when my child was not sleeping, there were no parenting classes available for me at 2 a.m. Right. And so,
I'm not holding one at 2 a.m. for you. So,
right. Good luck. And so we try to make it available to you when you need it most. And then our fourth belief is that trustworthy information and research-based information is one part of the process. We also highly encourage parents. Sometimes a parent-child relationship could use additional support. And so we always encourage families to seek those professionals out locally. So information, more than one way to raise great kids. And you're the expert on your family. We'll share good stuff, but you're the expert on your family.
You're the expert. Exactly.
So, yes. So I actually want to tell you a little bit about that research and reality. This concept of research and reality is really close to my heart personally. When I had my daughter, before I had my daughter, I had all the ideas, right? I knew exactly what I was going to do. This is how it was going to work.
You wrote the book beforehand,
right? Like yes. I knew all the things I needed to know. My daughter was born, and I like to say, with her own quirks. And one of those things was I was absolutely certain the research was telling me I had to breastfeed to be a quote unquote good parent. And it didn't work for my daughter as an infant. She couldn't gain weight. It wasn't good for our bonding. It wasn't good for my mental health. And I struggled for a long time because I was like, this is what research says. And after talking with some of my coworkers, Lori over here, as well as medical professionals, other family members and things, I had to make a decision that what I thought was going against the research. And so when I came back to this role as a parent educator, I said to Lori, I was like, okay, I'm a fraud, right? Like we give this information to people about research and I'm not even doing it myself, right? I'm not following. And Lori, in all her wisdom, and you said to me, she was like, Mackenzie, the research is like one part of parenting, right? That's the trustworthy information is one part of parenting. And so we've kind of developed our own little mantra of that we share research, but parents, you decide based on your own reality. And so it's not a matter of trusting your instincts or trusting the research. We believe that the information can help us make informed decisions for our own families, right? What my daughter needs might be different than what my son needs, or even between kids. And so research and reality is very close to our heart. And we are being sincere when we say, you decide, because only you are an expert in your family and your reality.
Exactly.
So, like we said, that research and reality, right? That's that 2 a.m. Googling that we have there.
Exactly.
And so the research would tell us that parents like information when you can go find it yourself online. And that might be because we're awake at 2 a.m., right? Versus looking at this next reality that we have. We know that sometimes reality is that not going to get it perfect all the time, right? Sometimes it's messy. And so we can just use that research to inform our plans and our decisions. And my big old other mantra here, we can use grace with ourselves.
We can
use grace with ourselves that we are doing the best we can in the middle of parenting in a pandemic, a literal pandemic. We are raising children.
We are. And we're doing a good job.
We're doing a good job.
We are.
Yes. So we have this little lens of research and reality. We want to share some really practical strategies with you for some tools you can use as you parent in this pandemic. Laura, you want to walk us through a few of those?
Sure, absolutely. So we look at these as we think about, and we're going to roll through these in terms of giving you both the research and then again, that reality framing of it. So the first, we'll talk about these individually, but I'll just quick blaze through them. Utilizing routines, adjusting to rituals, reframing our parenting reflections, considering individual temperament. Hint, hint, if you haven't been listening to our podcast, season 3 on temperament, make sure you do that. Considering our individual temperament. And the fifth one that we'll talk about is managing emotions. So let's look at that first one here a little bit. And when we think about utilizing routines, I need you to know that my reality thought that schedules and routines equaled the same thing. And they actually don't. So in the midst of this pandemic, our homes look really, really different than they did 6 months ago, right? So one or both parents, or there may be multiple adults in the home, maybe a parent is actually not in the home because they are out on the front lines taking care of other people who are sick. Our kids might be home all the time, some of the time, none of the time. And ultimately, we are facing our own unique realities right now amid all of this that's happening. And even with all of these unique realities, there actually is one thing that we can kind of zero in on. And that's the idea of putting different routines in place, different routines than we had in place 6 months ago. Now, routines, like I said, are different from schedules. So let's look at that a little bit. So research tells us by Woolen and Bennett that family routines are patterned interactions that are repeated over time. So like I said, I thought that meant schedules and routines were equal, but they're actually different. And routines are those regular functions that we do in daily life. So what do we do regularly? Well, we eat, we sleep, we probably have some chores to do. We might watch television regularly, and we might have regularly regular
programming.
Regular meetups, family, relative, whatever, right? So those are regular routines, not schedule. So when we look at routines, according to research, we know that stress in the family is often noted by this disruption of family routines. So have you had stress in the last 6 months? What's
Maybe.
the first thing that goes? Okay. Our routines. Maybe we aren't sleeping. Maybe we aren't eating together. Maybe we aren't meeting with family members anymore. And so as we look at the routines and we look at this family organization, family well-being, and family adaptation, we know that routines are associated with all those things. And so also thinking about routines, we look at being able to provide our children and ourselves this sense of normalcy and consistency in all the chaos, right? So somehow being able to manage those routines and creating this strategy about, okay, how can I help our family during the pandemic? We might have to consider things, first of all, regarding our children's ages, everyone's natural temperament and flexibility, what helps our family feel settled, organized, family resources like time, money, energy, and support. And as parents, we're the best experts on our family, and we're the best person to decide what makes sense for us and our children when it comes to these routines. And, some parents do feel like having set schedules when it comes to those routines are what works. And other people feel like having set schedules when it comes to those routines find it constricting. And whatever camp you find yourself in, the best thing that you can do is focus on how the routine itself brings normalcy to your family and your children.
Yes. So in that way, routines kind of become their own tool, right?
Exactly. They are your own tool when you think about all this chaos that's happening. And so many kids and parents also, when we look at routines, are having to miss out on some big moments. So do you want to talk about rituals?
Absolutely. So we talk about these rituals as big moments. A lot of times we compare rituals and routines in the research, that routines are kind of those mundane bedtime, mealtime, wake up times. So we've had to develop some new ones of those. And we think of these big moments as rituals, right? So we know that rituals tend to be symbolic, right? So they're more about the meaning behind them than they are about the actual event. They have an effect on us emotionally, and they're long-term kind of over generations. So we think of things like graduation, like milestone birthday parties, like end of school, right? Or beginning of school. And so we know that those rituals that maybe are a little tied to our heart have had to change in the midst of this pandemic. And so the research tells us that these rituals are important, right? To just totally skip over them like they don't matter is not realistic for us. And because we know, particularly for adolescents, that rituals are a part of how they identify who they are as people. And we know that as a family, these rituals give everyone a sense of belonging, right? I even think of like the people I graduated high school with. Even if we're not in contact, you always have that connection, right? There's that belonging because you went through this thing all together.
Yes, so rituals, you have things that you did together, right? You all know each other.
Absolutely. So as you think of your family rituals, maybe you have a normal back to school ritual that you didn't get to do this year. Or maybe this spring there were events that got canceled in this summer. And so we can think about adjusting these rituals as a tool. And so as we look at the rituals, we kind of outline these steps here of how do we talk to our kids about these big moments and how they feel about it. We want to check in with them and see what they're thinking about, right? Maybe I thought they were devastated, about this particular thing, and it finds out they don't care about that. They cared about this other thing. So I want to check in on where they're at, accept and acknowledge those feelings, right? Like, it's okay if you're mad. It's okay if you're disappointed. Whatever that feeling is, we want to acknowledge it, give space for it, and accept it. And then, of course, providing the real reasons, right? This isn't my fault as your parent. You might need to tell your teen that, right? This isn't my fault. I didn't do this to you, right? It's not your fault. It's not the school's fault, right? And so just like that, a factual reasoning. And then, right, Laura, you got to practice this too, talking to your own daughters about it, that emotional support as well.
Absolutely. It's interesting as I've watched school begin, the rituals that they've moved at the front end instead of the back end, which is an absolutely fabulous idea. So they've had senior night, the first part of the season instead of the last. And I keep thinking, how great is it that now throughout the whole season, people know, hey, these are the seniors and look at the special things they're going to be doing all season long. So that's kind of a fun ritual that they changed.
Absolutely. And that's the thing about, this idea of adjusting rituals or using rituals is as a tool in your parenting in a pandemic is like, we can't make our big trip that we normally would before school or whatever. How can we adjust, right? How can we get the aspects of that we loved? Like the family time, right? Or we all had time, we put our phones aside or devices aside. How can we still capture those things in our rituals? And so getting a little creative and involving your kids, right? Like, what parts of what we normally do you want to see if we can recreate, right? We still want to do this. And so using those rituals, recognizing they might have to look different, giving your kids space to accept that and their feelings around it, and finding some creative ways to still have those rituals.
Love it.
Absolutely.
So we have routines and rituals. And what about this third one?
Oh, okay. This is one that I'm like, okay, we cannot talk to parents about parenting in a pandemic without talking about how we think about our parenting.
Yes.
So, so often we're like, I tend to make even sarcastic jokes. We're like, yep, mom of the year, our kids ate cereal, 4 days in a row, whatever it is. But we tend to joke about this idea of being a good parent or a bad parent, right? And sometimes we even, I say we joke about it. Sometimes we sincerely talk to ourselves that way. Like today, I wasn't a good mom today. And so we want to look at some research-based parenting models that give us a different way to look at our parenting and to reflect on it than to say good or bad. Because who defines good or bad for one thing? And two, I can feel like a good mom and a bad mom in the exact same moment.
Absolutely.
Like, I'm cooking a healthy dinner for our family, and I cannot handle my toddler climbing on my leg anymore. And so in the exact same moment, I might feel like both. So let's talk a little about some other ways we can talk to ourselves about our parenting. This one is particularly my favorite. It's actually a part of another model, but they use these 4 terms that I cling to, and I need to basically tattoo on my arm and face and hand, anywhere I'll see it.
I think you said you were reframing or going over them last night in the middle of the night.
I'm not even kidding. This weekend, I had we'd had a really busy day, just getting a lot of stuff done. And so it had been a productive day, but not necessarily a super all the fun stuff with my kids kind of day. And so at the end of the day, I was like, oh, was I a good mom today? And then I was like, no, that is not a helpful question. And I literally ran through these 4 words. And so I asked myself, was I a consistent parent? Right. So across different situations, in different places, my kids know what to expect of me because I act consistently with my words and my actions, as well as over time. That one time I don't fly off the handle for something, and then the next time it's no big deal. So having some consistency with my kids. Am I an effective parent? Or that's kind of what I asked myself. Was I an effective parent, right? Was I using strategies that were helping my kids get to the outcomes we were working towards together, right? Did they get some healthy food today? Did they get food today? Did they get food today?
Yes, they did.
And was I an active parent? Was I present? Were we doing things? Was I available to them? And then was I attentive, right? Instead of just physically present with them, was I also available to their needs? And you know what? And there were times when I was getting stuff done. Like I said, we recently moved, getting stuff done around the house. And so that wasn't my super attentive moment, but I was fully present at bedtime, right? I tried to be very attentive. I put everything else aside. And so it's not doing these things around the clock all the time, but that when you ask yourself at the end of the day, oh man, how did today go? I was consistent with my kids, right? I held normal expectations. I did do things that helped us get towards shared goals. And I was there. And I did, even if it wasn't 100% of the time, I gave them quality time and attention today.
Absolutely. I love those 4 words.
I love them so much.
Yeah.
I cling to them. And then
they're
there's
very grace-filled, just like you talked about.
They
are, yes.
Absolutely. And then the other way that we think about it, another parenting reflection, I love to use this one in the middle of a decision, which we actually just dropped a bonus episode yesterday on decision making and decision fatigue. But so I love when I'm getting ready to make a decision for our family, with my co-parent, I tend to think, am I providing responsiveness and demandingness? Now, this parenting model has been around for a long time, but it's basically this idea of, do I hold appropriate expectations for my kids, right, that are helping them develop and those things, while also providing warmth? And so as I think about sending them back to school, as I think about, okay, my daughter says she wants another snack. Well, I talk about that in one of our podcast episodes, the whole snack decision after school. But, am I providing both warmth and appropriate expectations? And so I use this kind of model to check myself in the middle of making a decision for my parenting. And so again, when we think about reframing our reflections as parents, we are not talking about good and bad parents, right?
We are not.
We are never, that is not a grace-filled or empowering. That's the other thing is if we only think of ourselves as good and bad, right? If I looked at what I did on Saturday and I was like, I was a bad mom today, where does that give me to think about what I want to do differently, right? Who's measuring that? Yeah,
exactly.
And so we don't like those terms good and bad. So we wanted to give you some other ways to think about it instead.
Yes.
All right. This is Lori's favorite.
It is.
I was like, this is Lori's favorite.
It is. And it just happens to be our season 3 podcast.
Our little commercial here in the middle. Season 3.
Season 3. So as you know, every child is different, right? Even in your own household, every child is different. They all have different energy levels. They can all be exhausted at different times of the day and night. They might be active. They might be relaxed. They might really have a good perception and sensitivity of the world around them. And I use that word good. I just meant, a highly perceptive or highly sensitive temperament. And we really do need to consider what our child's natural temperament is so that we can, get a better understanding of how they're handling things like pandemic stress. And as we think about it, we look at temperament from this perspective of, do we have a natural energy level? Is it higher or lower? Or do we have this regular rhythmicity? Are we approaching withdrawing? Are we intense? And there's this idea of this continuum. And how much did we get of all of these? And the important thing to remember is that temperament is inborn. It's genetic. It's always been there. And when we think about temperament, we might think about these patterns of maybe a slow to warm up temperament or a feistier spirited temperament, or, just kind of that flexible and go with the flow temperament. But the most important thing to remember about it is that it's individual and unique. So as we look at routines and rituals and the idea of using different words than good and bad, we also have to understand that what works for one child or one adult in the family may not work for another. And that's what we need to do. Understanding temperament is going to help us possibly anticipate behavior outcomes. It can help us anticipate those challenging behaviors, and it can help us to encourage some really important skills along the way. When we look at understanding temperament, we can teach our children important skills regarding the temperament that we gave them. So we're not allowing their temperament to be an excuse for how they behave, but it actually becomes this gift that they can build skills upon with.
Absolutely. Can I give a really fast example? Can I?
You may.
Okay. So one of my kids is pretty slow to warm up. So a lot of times we might use that word shy, that in new situations that she's slow to warm up. And so in terms of anticipating, right? So I've come to understand that about her, that pattern that I've seen over time. And so when we go to new places or new situations, I can anticipate that it will be hard for her. And so I can give her forewarnings about who will be there, about what she can expect. I think about like the first day of school transition, right? Okay, we're going to walk up to the door. They're going to take your temperature. You're going to be wearing your mask. And so anticipating all of that and building the skills, right? So I could think about, wearing that mask at school, it would be good if we could practice that ahead of time, because doing something for the first time can be hard for her. And so I was able to kind of build her skills, right? And then telling her, sometimes you can use some time to warm up to new places. It's okay to wait a little while. And then, right? And then, you do eventually need to say hi. You do need to go into the school building. You do need to. And so it's not that I'm not going to have you do those things, right? I'm going to keep those expectations, but I can help you build the skills so that you can navigate.
Absolutely. And like we've been talking about, we have an entire season on temperament this fall. I think we've only dropped 5 episodes, and I think we have 12 or 13 planned.
So many good ones.
Hop on over to our Science Parenting podcast and catch up on our temperament series. When we look at temperament and routines and rituals and reframing our parenting, we also really make sure that we throw this in the toolbox. And that is this idea of helping to manage emotions in challenging moments. And pandemic stress is real, and it can really take us a moment to recognize that our meltdowns personally and our meltdowns in our children can absolutely be part of all of this stress of the unknown and all of this stress of changing rituals and all this stress of missing out on rituals and routines. And so one of the things that we like to talk about is that we have this tool that we call Stop, Breathe, Talk. And what I want you to do is I want you to think about a challenging moment. Okay, it doesn't take long to think about, right? You
I have one from today.
Right? Yes. And so as you think about challenging moments, think about a challenging moment you may have had at home and a challenging moment you might have had at work or out in public. And we can feel the steam begin to roll out of our ears or the churning in our stomach. And as we think about just those moments, we can start to physically begin to re-feel all of those things in our body. And it's different at home than at work with our colleagues, right? So we might blow up at home, lose our cool, and express our emotions loudly at home.
Strongly.
But we don't often do that at work, correct? So what we do is we go, okay, well, that must mean that we have some strategies that we tap into at work. And how can we also draw those strategies into how we feel at home? And so that's where we talk about this idea of stop, breathe, talk. And so when we look at the stop, breathe, talk, we think about that natural moment of challenge coming at us as we look at the pandemic and all these changes that we've had to make. And we think about how is it that we can begin to bring ourselves back into this regulation? How can we begin to regulate our emotions? How can we begin to regulate our breathing? How can we begin to pause and literally think about things and say things a different way? So I'm going to pass this back to you because I know that you have a very favorite way of sharing this.
I do have a favorite way of sharing this. And so I like to think about this technique of stopping, taking a breath, and then talking in terms of punctuation. And so as I think of a heated moment or a challenging moment, which might I mention are inevitable in parenting, period, and are inevitable in parenting in a pandemic, right? There will be heated moments, there will be challenging moments.
Yes.
But as I think about this 3-step process, I like to think of stop as an exclamation point. It's usually the point where I'm like, whoa, I am really frustrated, or maybe I'm really tired or really stressed or really overstimulated, but my emotions are running high, right? And when we think about our interaction with our child, maybe as kind of a sentence or conversation, it's like, this is the point where it's like, whoa, emotions are running high, right? That's that exclamation point. And sometimes I even say like, whoa, I am an exclamation point right now. I am having big feelings. And then I like to think of this breath as a comma, right? When you come to a comma in a conversation, it tells you to take pause, right? And actually there's this really cool research that taking breaths that are 6 to 10 seconds long can like re-regulate your nervous system and your cardiorespiratory or your cardiovascular system and your respiratory system. Fascinating to me, but
I love it.
So a big deep breath helps re-regulate your body because those big emotions have you running all over the place, right? So we regulate ourselves with that comma. We come to the place to take a breath. And then I like to think of talk as the ellipses or that ... That
I love that ...
Right, ... Because I think of, right, if I was like telling you a story and it was like, and everything was going terribly until ... right? It's kind of a change in direction. And so as we think about, because we've taken that, we've taken that moment to stop and say, whoa, I am responding this way because I'm very overstimulated right now. And I've taken that breath to help regulate my system and to help think like, how do I actually want this to go, right? It's not that I'm mad at my daughter for asking for a snack, right? It's okay that she's hungry. What I really want to say is supper will be ready in 3 minutes. But I don't want to yell that at her, right? I want to, the way I would communicate with a coworker, I would take that breath. I wouldn't send that email while angry, right? And so I would take that breath and then that ... We can speak with intention. We can talk to our kids in a way that's going to work towards the outcome we really want instead of the spiral that our emotions would have us on. And so that stop, breathe, talk, I like to think of as that conversation. Big feelings with the exclamation point, the pause in the middle to re-regulate, and then taking that opportunity to talk to change the direction of an interaction.
And research tells us that, hitting harms and yelling hurts.
Yes.
But the reality is that sometimes we are an exclamation point. And we need a tool to be able to say, I'm an exclamation point and I need to turn this around.
Yes. And sometimes I fess up. My husband speaking of temperament, my husband tends to be very mild. He's about always right here. And I'm always like, oh, where? Can't guess me. Because I'm very intense. And so I like to say he's better at remembering to stop, breathe, talk early on in the interaction, right? So he might stop, breathe, talk the second he hears the whiny voice come out. Whereas I might be like, for a little while. And then I'm like, wait. And so that's one thing I love about stop, breathe, talk. No matter how far into an interaction you are, you can use this technique. And there's been times when I'm like, whoa, I'm really spiraling us down a road. And then I've literally stopped, taken that breath and said, okay, I have not been talking nice to you. Can we restart? Right? Can we have a hug and restart? Like,
we need a do-over.
Yes, we need a do-over. And in the midst of everything happening and COVID and all of this stuff, we can give ourselves that grace and show it to our kids too, right? That we can start over and we can go in a new direction.
The fourth time, correct?
Yes.
We need to stop, breathe, talk, back away from the computer, ...
Yes. Yes. So stop, breathe, talk is our favorite technique, kind of our flagship tool for parenting, especially parenting in a pandemic.
Yes.
So. Excellent. So we've covered kind of 5 tips and strategies. We talk about using those routines as a tool to provide some normalcy and consistency, adjusting those rituals. We know they look different in a pandemic. And so finding creative ways to do that. We're going to reframe our parenting reflections. We're not going to talk to ourselves about being good and bad parents. And we're not going to talk about other people that way either, right? That's not grace-filled.
No.
We're going to consider our own temperament, right? How easy is it for me to adjust to these changes versus how easy or hard it might be for my child or co-parent. So we're going to consider that temperament, and we're going to have a strategy for managing emotions in a heated moment. So
we're going to stop, breathe, talk. So, we also know that sometimes parents just want to go and find information on their own, like at 2 a.m., right? And so the Science of Parenting website is a place for you to do that. It's been redesigned. We think it's super cool. It's a space to ensure that parents are just a few clicks away from finding some reliable research-based information.
Yes.
And as we look at the website, we have lots of great resources related to children's developmental abilities, as well as some guidance and discipline pieces. You can also find some age-based resources all the way up through age 8, if not 12, if I remember correctly. As we look at the Science of Parenting resources, don't forget to listen to the podcast. And as we wrap up our day or our time here before we bring Miss Leah back in with questions, we do want to remember our Stop, Breathe, Talk flagship tool. We know, again, that this method can be used no matter how far into the challenging interaction you are. So let's see what Leah has to say.
Yes.
I have a feeling she's been back there scribbling away because I know just a little bit about her.
And I feel like she's probably been like, hello, my turn. I have things to say.
There were so many one-liners that I was like, oh, that's good. Oh, that's good. Or like the time when Mackenzie, you were like, did my kids eat healthy today? And then you corrected yourself and you're like, no. Did my kids eat today? And I was like, yes.
Did I feed my children?
Yes. Oh my gosh, that was so good. I know you guys had to like cram in tons and tons of information. I did try to throw some links in the comments. So those of you watching now or watching later, there is a link in the comments that takes you straight to the Science of Parenting homepage where you can access that information that Lori just shared, and you can access all of their podcasts. And one really cool thing that I love, I'm like a visual person. So I love that I can like be outside on a walk and I can have you guys in my ears, but I can also go to the website and I can watch you guys because I love the facial expressions. I know. And what color lipstick is on today? Like just these things that I adore, right? Yeah. So I just feel like your content is so great, but also the way you deliver it. You're everywhere. We can find you.
Thanks.
So we did have some questions come in and they are good questions.
Yeah.
Like right away, like you were barely even into the live and boom, I'm like, oh,
and so they're like, we have been waiting for them to answer this.
I know. And I'm like, yes, that one. I do have that question. Okay. So when we had come in, how do you handle gaming and screen time for a teenager who is at home by themselves? So parents are working, so less supervision, but they're doing that online hybrid schooling right now. So like, how do you balance the fact that you have kids home and if all of their schooling is done, how do you balance that? And they're unsupervised or even less supervised because you're focused on other things.
That's a good one.
I'll say, do you want to go first or you want me to?
I'll go first. So, because I actually have a child who is, she is online on a lot and some of it is with gaming. And so here's what we have done. We've had a conversation about it, essentially saying, okay, these are the things that need to happen because of school. These are the things that you would like to happen because you can game with your friends. And these are the things that I would like to try to find a balance between. So they're old enough to have input into that conversation. And so allowing them the opportunity to say, okay, well, I can agree to X number of, minutes spent on homework, X number of minutes and X, so I think that that's one thing that sometimes we feel like we have to have all the answers to. We really actually don't. Because we can have a conversation about who has input into this, the school, you, and your child. So if all three could have a, input into what does the school need out of you? What do I need out of you? And what do you want out of this? We could come up with a plan. But that plan also has to include, okay, so what are the consequences when you don't follow through with the plan? And they can come up with the consequences as well. So part of parenting is allowing the children to also share in the decision making. So they've come up with a plan and they've come up with the consequences. And so when you implement the consequences, you can kind of say, well, you agreed to this.
Yeah.
What do you got?
Well, I would say what I was going to say was actually really similar. That the kind of formal term or formal process of what Lori described can be called contracting. And so if you think of it, right, as we think of like, we're developing a contract, but that the real process is the conversation, right? That like, so what's important to you? What do we feel like is a realistic, is 8 hours a day is not going to be realistic for you to game. We need to find some balance. And so, but yes, using that conversation to come up with a plan that you write down, that you have the developed consequences of, well, and what do you expect from me as your parent in the midst of this? And having that opportunity to use that contracting. And also I listened to for parenting educators, some researchers on screen time, and even they were talking about giving ourselves and our kids the grace that we maybe don't have to think about this following super strict guidelines right now as much as we want to think about realistic. And then long-term, maybe making some of those changes. So,
great question.
That's so good to hear. Cause I've definitely been involved in conversations or trainings where I've heard the damages of screen time and we're on screens a lot right now.
Yes.
And it's not just educationally, it's mom needs to zone out or mom's trying to work. Here's the phone and I'm going, oh gosh. Yeah. Laura, I wish I would have written it down, Lori, at the very beginning. You said like 3 things and I need you to say them again. It was like, what are their expectations or what's their ask?
What is the child needing out of this interaction? What is the school expectations regarding their homework? And what is your expectation? And you bring up a really good point, Leah, that we're also on screens. And so, for us to put in a blanket, X number, and then we get the report on our phone that says your screen time is at 54%.
How do we turn that off?
Don't tell me that.
Turn it off. Oh, that's so good.
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks
well,
for that
awesome.
question. That's a
I
good
know
one.
that was such a good question. So another one that we had come in, I have a younger toddler, about 2 years, little concerned about how she's going to behave in public post-pandemic. What tips do you have for teaching littles how to behave in public when they're going out, when going out becomes, a safer option? Which is so true. And my kids are a little older than that, so I haven't really thought about like I'm worried because we live on a farm. So my youngest still thinks it's okay to just go to the bathroom when you got to go to the bathroom. And that's a big one. But just in general, public politeness and those things.
I used to tell parents to like practice run. Like, before you actually really have to go to the grocery store for milk because you are out, practice, so practice. And really with toddlers, it's a matter of understanding their temperament. What is it that they can handle developmentally at this age? What is it their temperament can handle? And what is it that expectation really is that we have? And do our expectations match their developmental level and their abilities? So if we are, if we're expecting really, really high things to happen, like we might have to lower the bar a little bit.
And that was going to be my question too. Was I shouldn't let you go first? You're saying the good things.
My turn.
Yeah, what is your expectation? Are you thinking of a specific place, right? Like the grocery store, or going to like a religious service, or going to, where are you headed? And what are the expectations that you're hoping for, right? Are you expecting your child to sit still? Are you expecting them to be quiet? Or, what specific things are you hoping for? Check to make sure those are developmentally appropriate expectations, right? Even not in a pandemic, a 2-year-old can have a hard time sitting quietly. And then, think about those, consider their temperament. Listen to our podcast on temperament to figure a little bit more about that. Because yes, if you have an active child, expecting them to sit still, you can anticipate that expecting them to sit still for 30 minutes in a public place will be hard. What can you do to help them, right? What can you do to help them with that? And so think about that temperament, and then what specific expectations are you looking at? And maybe you look at one public place at a time, right? One set of expectations, like the grocery store, or, going once we're able to kind of like go out for an event, right? Like a ball game and things.
It'd be so exciting.
Yes. All the excitement.
Yeah. I had my family like probably a month and a half into, quarantining. I said, tonight we're going to get real clothes on for dinner. Like, and we're going to have real clothes on, guys. Like no elastic, elastic. And we got dressed up, and I took a picture because obviously, but it was, and again, my kids are a little bit older where they have had experiences of public whatever, but I thought we're going to forget how to like eat in front of people, and we're going to forget how to not worry if you dribble down the, just like, so yeah, I feel that, and I don't have the 2-year-old. So, okay. So we had another comment come in from Kristen, that she hadn't really realized the pressure that her 15-year-old felt about staying healthy, making sure that, her health now, we're more worried knowing that if we are someone that has contracted COVID-19 and spread it, it could impact our class, our school, our team. I mean, it's a heavy, heavy weight. So yeah, hashtag need to be attentive. But
I love that.
I hadn't thought about that till I read Kristen's comment, and I was like, yeah.
Samesies. Yes, that's exactly what my daughter is feeling.
That check-in of like, okay, I didn't. Yeah, if we had just been chatting about the day, I don't know if I would have caught on to that.
Yeah, totally. So that was a good one. A couple things I want to draw attention to that I did put in the comments, a link when you guys reference that decision-making podcast. I did put that in there.
Thank you.
Because decision-making right now is just off the wall. And the hard part is really you're making decisions with the best information you have in front of you at the moment, but we're all living through a pandemic the first time. And as you guys talked, I actually shared this in a group I'm in that is communities that were really hit by the derecho storm.
Yes.
Because I'm realizing so much of what you're talking about parenting in the pandemic translates to this other crazy reality that Iowans are living in right now, because you add in this hurricane in Iowa. Like I've seen that picture of like, who had this on your bingo card for August? Like, no way. So yeah, that is definitely something that I'm reading this going, okay. So our friend Susan said, great podcast. She heard from Janet Lansbury that shared the importance of having a schedule for your kids when working from home. And I really struggled with that, honestly, because I feel like I'm either a really good employee or a really good parent. And it's really hard to find.
You're not a good. We're not a good or bad parent, Leah. But I know what you mean. Yeah, like I can either pay attention to work or pay attention to my children, and it's very hard to do both.
Yeah. And that's where that idea of I thought routines and schedules equaled, and they don't. And so when I found myself, just beating myself up for not maintaining a schedule. This happens at this time. This happens at this time. This happens at this time. And once I realized, as long as I got all the routines in, like we ate, slept, and did our chores, that was great. And my kids were okay with it. And I was okay with it. And it was so much better than for myself to not beat myself up about not being able to handle that strict schedule. Now, other people's families, they need that to feel in control. And so there's that balance of what works for your best friend on social media may not work for you.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
You're okay. And just because it doesn't work for you doesn't mean it's not working for them, right?
Exactly.
Like, we're different people, different families, different realities.
I can't wait till all of us moms and parents and caretakers that came out hot from the pandemic gate and we're like, chart, schedule, like I can't wait till those memories pop up on social media in a year and we're like, oh gosh, that was a really funny 3 days when we really But again, for some people, they probably that was probably a lifeline.
Yes,
absolutely. Our friend Kenzie says, hey guys. And we should give a shout out to Kenzie and Barb because you guys there's more to the Science of Parenting team. So do you guys want to just briefly overview your guys' team and how you all work together to make the magic?
Absolutely. So Kenzie DeYoung is our producer. She is the genius behind actually making the podcast a podcast, making sure we look good, sound good, all those things, editing. She is so great. So she is one of two additional counterparts, right, Lori?
Absolutely. And then we have Barb Dunn Swanson, and she is our writer, and she makes us sound smart.
Yes, she does.
She helps us remember things that when we get so adaptable with our temperament or so excited about what we're sharing, she helps us to remember, well, don't forget to say this because they have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And without Barb, we would not sound half as intelligent as we think we are.
You guys are you guys balance each other so well and just all bring different strengths to the table. You're good team. Okay. A couple other things. We're already nearing an hour mark.
Yes.
So again, I'm going to remind you, if you're watching this for the next few minutes that we're still live, or if you're tuning in later after the live's over, still throw questions in the comments and we will make sure to supply you with resources or answers, or even if you just want to share a story and you just want to have that conversation, we are here for it. And we want to let you know, we're like, we are here for it. Okay. This one was actually a me one. I want you to say again towards the beginning, and it's like I'm trying to mentally remember all these things. Really, you talked about ritual and routine, and for me, I know in an early podcast when you talked about this, it was a big light bulb moment because I had lumped a lot of these things in my mind together, and so just if you want to separate those two again, I think that's valuable.
Sure. I would love to. And I love this. I love the ritual routine stuff. And so we do have bonus episodes that you can go listen to get more in-depth info about it. So a routine is kind of that mundane, regular function kind of activity. So like I said, bedtime, mealtime, even if the routine of when we come home from school, we check your bag, right? So those kinds of things are routine. They're usually more functional than symbolic. It's just this is just what we got to do. Versus a ritual usually has more meaning tied to it. We tend to think of it as your big moments. But the big thing about it is that it's affective is the term they use for it. It's carried across generations, but there's an emotional impact, right? We think back on a routine can become a ritual, right? Like I think back to my mom reading these, or my dad reading these books to me at bedtime, or I think back on graduation. But so the ritual is more has more emotional impact, long term, kind of your big moment, symbolic. I like to talk about graduation, that like the big deal is not that you walked across the stage with a cap on, right? That's like what you did, but it wasn't about that. It was about represented. And so that ritual is symbolic versus a routine's more functional.
And when we look at, parenting in the pandemic, when it comes to rituals, it's important to also think about what we feel about the ritual and what our child feels about the ritual, because they might be different. Where we might be feeling badly because we didn't have this huge graduation party, and the child may be thinking, oh, thank heavens I did not have to have all those people at my house. And
they still send money.
Yeah. Oh, and I even think of other things families have been experiencing, like weddings are a ritual and funerals, right? We have rituals around funerals. And so even some of those things that like, not just, I have young kids, just as a family in general, there may have been maybe there's usually a big family reunion in the summer you didn't get to do. So checking in on those things too.
Another quote I put down because it just was like, yes, it's so good. You can be a good parent and a bad parent in the exact same moment. So making sure that you're shifting the thought of it's not that good and bad. There's more to it. Oh, that was so, I wish people heard, parents, caretakers, I wish they could hear that more. It's so valuable. Okay. What are some things that I could add in at the beginning or the end of my day to interact with my kids, really wanting them to start and end their day well? I know for me, I typically wake up and it's like, hurry, hurry, hurry. I've got some kids back to in person, wearing their masks, and I've got some virtually learning. So my mornings are blah, blah, blah. And by the end of the day too, it's typically, did we get XYZ done? And so I fear that 2 meaningful moments in their day, the beginning and the end, might not be the safest and the most loved they feel.
Yes.
So like, what are some things I can be thinking of?
Dibs. Okay, go. So, with my younger kids, one thing we actually started doing around this transition back to school is we have like a visual routine. And so my daughter is 4, and so it's a little card that has a picture of her hamper. And like the pajamas need to get in the hamper, right? It has a picture of the clothes we laid out the night before, right? The bag, we always put those clothes in. And so one of those things is walking through, my daughter's 4, like she's young. For your older kids, it can be like, hey, you need to make sure you have these things done by the time you come downstairs at this time. So laying out those expectations together and then developing, like when we have those things laid out, we can help create a little more time. So I'm not nagging you on the way to school about the fact that, right? Instead, we're able to talk a little bit about like, what are you looking forward to today? Or what are you feeling nervous about? And so I would say like developing routines that are consistent. And then one of the really simple things, like research is just like do that is some people call it floor time, but like special time. And so whether your kids are older or younger, that there is a part of the day where they have your undivided attention, and they literally say like even 15 minutes.
Gut check.
No, but it is like, and that's honestly a part of what I was talking about. Like, this Saturday, did I? I'm like, you know what? I did give her my undivided attention for 15 minutes at bedtime, right? And I don't have to have special time all day. Sometimes I set my standards so high. But like, I am always available for every thought you might have.
Yes.
Like, no, I'm not. And so thinking about what times during the day you can create a plan of like, okay, I set everything aside and here we tuned in for a while. So special time.
I have a silly check-in. check-in. Sort of silly. and it's because in this moment of, I have a teenager. So my teenager isn't always going to be around me, doesn't always want to be around me, and we're oftentimes in different places.
Sometimes I don't want to be around them. Is that
right? Exactly.
Can I say that?
So, yes, you may. And so
I need space is what I say.
We might just have this motion. And so for us, it happens to be this kind of shaking and relaxing of the shoulders. So since we're on social media, visually I can do it. So I just like, and that's, it's kind of that touching that if she sees me do that and I'm looking at her, she knows that is between her and I.
Yeah.
And we just connected.
So cool. Yeah.
And, you know, whatever it says to her at that moment, in a volleyball tournament, it was, okay, shake it off, relax. You got this. But as she walks out the door of the day in the morning, as we're all racing around, I might just, you know, shake my shoulders and she go, okay, yep, I got this. It's so just you know, something, it could be something as silly as a high five, you know, wiggling your fingers, or, you know, as you walk past their room at the end of the night, you know, a silly sound, just so that they know that's their sound, that's their motion, that's meant for them from you.
Absolutely.
That's so cool. And I feel like that those things could change, or they could stay the same depending on what they are or their ages and stuff. My son, for a while, our oldest, he didn't like saying I love you to us, like in public, like getting out of the car before school. But we figured out if we just said you, we just took out that middle part. We knew it meant, and so for a phase in his life, that was our little thing of like you, and he'd be like you, and then we just move on, and anyone passing wouldn't have any idea what was going on. But
yes, I love that. Connections. Like, I think that's the big thing, is like, you're connected. It doesn't have to be this big elaborate, you know, and we don't have to hold our standards so high sometimes. Like, we're going to connect. We're here.
Yeah. Quick little notes sticking, you know, I just think finding ways to let them know that you're connecting with them. Because it's
does sending memes to them count? Because I'm also very good at that.
Like, I'm gonna go with yes, because I do it, right? So it must be okay.
I have a nice little gift catalog. I haven't shared them to my young children yet, but
so our girl Jordan said, "Love the differentiation between rituals and routines," and I think that one, like I said, I just think that's so phenomenal, because you can. Any age, any relationship, really, not just parenting. I think that's so valuable. And I'm going to guess it's our girl Kenzie over on Science of Parenting page. Put in some links for some of the bonus, different bonus on routines. And then there's a bonus on rituals. And if you haven't already followed their page, click on that, like their page, follow it. You can also do the same for all of their, all the different platforms that you could listen to podcasts on. You can subscribe there. And like I said, if you happen to not be into the audio side of podcasts, they have, just similar to the look and feel of what we're doing right here, they have recorded all of their podcasts, so you can actually watch them and see their faces and what lipstick they're wearing, etc., etc. I'm going to throw on the bottom here as we start to wrap up a bit. You can still add questions in. If we don't get to them before we hop off, we will get to them afterwards. But this is the Iowa Concern line. Right at the beginning, there was a countdown and you saw a little video, but Iowa Concern is a free resource from Iowa State Extension and Outreach. And we have specialists that are ready 24/7 with language interpretation if needed. And they are there to help with anything, pretty much anything and everything you are facing. They can help with stress, with job, with financial, with natural disasters, just all of these things. They are ready to share resources, to connect you with maybe local entities near you, but just to support you. So I'm making sure every time we've come up with tips from experts going, we got to get this out, because we don't know what you're facing, but whatever it is, you can always reach out to Iowa Concern, again, 24/7, and it is free. And our friends at Science of Parenting, same with them. You can find them on Facebook. You can find ways to connect with them. Twitter, you're pretty active on Twitter, Science of Parenting, but also you guys as specialists. And you can find their Science of Parenting handle for Facebook and Twitter, as well as at the bottom of the screen now, you'll be seeing their personal handles that you can follow their pages there. You're going to get a lot of great resources that are theirs, and some that you see from other, people that are doing the work. And I just love it.
Thank you so much.
I love it.
Yeah, so I have one plug, and that is that tomorrow on Thursday, we have a brand new podcast dropping, and it's specifically on temperament and sleep. And how sleep is impacted by temperament. So
with we have a special guest joining us that I am very excited about.
Is it a baby? I feel like it's a baby.
It's not a baby. That's an idea, though. Why haven't we had babies on our podcast?
Well, ironically, and I think this is a sign from someone else. My youngest turns 5 tomorrow, and he has not slept through the night a day in his blessed life. So that will be his birthday present to me, is that I will tune in for that temperament and sleep. Ooh.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
I've just loved learning from you guys on your podcast, but also interacting with you here. And the work you're doing is so valuable. Do not stop.
Thank you. We're enjoying it. So we're grateful to be here, sharing with you too.
Best job ever.
Yes.
All right. We're signing off today. You guys have a very good day.
Thanks.